I try. Okay. It says that it's starting, but I can't tell. Okay, it looks like we're on live. Hi, everybody. Jeanne Casteen here, Democratic candidate for Maricopa County School Superintendent. And this week, I don't know if y'all have noticed, but the focus has really been about school board leadership. We had Elora Diaz, we had Chanel Poe, we had Mariana Sandoval, and today we have one of my favorite people in the whole world, Ylenia Aguilar. And Ylenia is a fantastic school board president in the Osborn School District. So Osborn is more on the west side, whereas Creighton, my district, where I serve on the board, is more on the east side, but we're similar. I think your district is probably a little bit smaller. And I think, I'm trying to remember when it was that I first met you, and I'm just guessing that it would have to be probably when, it'd have to be like an ASBA conference, but I've known you now for quite a while.
So first of all, thank you very much for this opportunity. I'm very humbled and I'm grateful to have the opportunity to be on here. I do remember when I first met you, it was actually, I think you were still teaching in the Isaac School District. And it was at a parent-teacher event. It was a community event on the weekend. And it was in the library, or I don't remember where it was, but I remember we did like an introduction, a circle, and everybody introduced themselves. And that's when I met you the first time. So it was, my kids were little. So you actually met Brock and Felix when they were really tiny when I first moved here. I think it was 2015 when I met you the first time. I was at that time didn't know that I was gonna run, not interested in running. I was just there to support. I think I was there in support of my ex-husband who worked there. So I remember meeting you and hearing your story and knowing that you were a school board member. So I think you're one of the first school board members that I met when I first moved here. So it was a community event on the weekend for the families. That's how I first met you.
Very cool. See, I feel terrible sometimes because I don't always remember the details of things. So Ylenia, you've been doing really, really good work in Osborn. But first, before we talk about all the great work that you've been able to do, give us a little bit of background. Where are you from? Where'd you grow up, etc.?
I am originally from Veracruz, Mexico. So that's the Gulf of Mexico. My mom is from Nogales, which is the border, Nogales, Sonora, which is the border with Nogales, Arizona. My parents divorced when I was born, so my mother raised me and immigrated from Nogales to Tucson when I was, I believe, 10 months old, just like many immigrants undocumented people, just coming to the United States to provide me and my sisters with a better life. And we lived in Tucson. And yeah, that's where I started elementary school. And even like many undocumented children, like I moved a lot. I went to more than 15 different schools. And I am grateful for all of the educators, the teachers, the community who provided so many opportunities for me and the stability, structure, and nurture that I needed as a child. Yeah, that's probably where my passion for education began, was meeting so many teachers and moving so much that I always felt safe in schools and nurtured by my teachers. And they were the ones who instilled the value of education and pursuing an education and continuing despite adversity in my situations and my circumstances. So I think that's where it all began, where I wanted to fight for a teacher. Actually, I wanted to be a teacher, and I ended up marrying a teacher. So, so yeah, that's the beginning of the journey. In 2011, he taught Mexican American Studies in Tucson, which was a program that was dismantled, and that led for us to move to Phoenix. So that's how I ended up in Phoenix. And I had non-immigrant status, meaning that I wasn't undocumented anymore, but I was on my path to citizenship when I moved here. So in 2014, when I moved from Tucson to Phoenix, I wasn't a citizen yet. I became a citizen later that year in 2014. So when I was encouraged to run the first time, I still hadn't gained citizenship. So it was like the second time around when I was encouraged by the same person to run that I had gained my citizenship, and I felt like what better thing to do than to give back to my community that has provided everything to me through my public service. So I didn't think about it twice. I remember the person that I sat with. He told me, I asked him, like, what is it going to take for me to win? And he told me hard work, knocking on a lot of doors. If he would have said money first, I would have said absolutely not. But since he said hard work, I knew that I could outwork my opponents because I had been working since I was 14. And I knew they were all male. So I in my mind, I knew that I could work harder than anyone. So that's when I decided to run. And it has been, when I ran and when I won my election, and when I voted, that was my first time voting ever. So I got to vote for the first time for a woman, for myself. So that to me is my the true American dream. That is, voting is something that I don't take for granted. As someone who was formerly undocumented, I still remember like living in the shadows, and that I still remember, what it's like to not have a voice. So I try to be that voice for just not only immigrants and undocumented people, but for women and children and those who can't vote. So we really don't think about the impact that voting makes in our lives or in other people's lives, but it definitely makes an impact. So it's not something that I take lightly. I'm really lucky and privileged that I gained path to citizenship. A lot of people don't have, the same luck. So I don't take it for granted.
You're making me a little bit misty-eyed here because, I've always taught in Title I schools, largely Latino, and of course, there's many undocumented kids that I've known throughout the year. And so, sorry, you totally took me off guard. I mean, like, your story is really incredible, and the fact that you really understood that and now are serving. It's such a great story, Ylenia, and I'm so grateful that you did that. So question, did you go to Tucson Unified then? Was that where the 15 schools were that you went?
Yeah, so one of them was I started in the Sunnyside Unified School District, and then I ended up in Mexico City with my dad. Then I did end up in Tucson Unified School District. So yes, I went from Sunnyside to Tucson to Phoenix. Phoenix, so it was South Mountain High School, so Phoenix Union High School District. So yeah, like the universe has taken me to many areas. One of them includes the Midwest, where I lived in a small rural town in Illinois where I was the only Latina. And that was my middle school experience. So it was 7th, 8th, and my first semester of my freshman year. So it was an interesting experience. It was at first culture shock, right? To be the only Latina in a small little town. I lived in a little town where there was only a post office and a Mennonite church. And I went to school in another town where it was junior, senior high school and class A and class B, 25 students per class. So very different experiences from like where I was coming from at the time. I was coming from Mexico City. So extremely the opposite experience. But I'm grateful for all of them. They've prepared me and they have shaped me into the woman that I am now. And I'm grateful for that because I've been able to see so many different things, so many different educational systems, and also experience, what it's like to be the only person of color in the entire town and the entire school. But, for some reason, I've always taken the positive out of my experiences and have grown with those experiences because that's what we can do is grow from the good or bad experiences that we have.
What was the name of the small town where you grew up in Illinois?
So I lived in Dewey and went to school in Fisher, which is 45 minutes away from Champaign, if I remember correctly, which Dewey is next to Rantoul. So that's Rantoul is usually what people recognize. So yeah, Champaign is where the University of Illinois is. And yeah, I remember when we would have to, there's nowhere to buy like spices and tortillas or anything at that time. So we would have to drive to Champaign. Actually, we drove to Chicago to get like our spices, and sometimes they, yeah. So it was a really great experience. I can say that I have a, you know, it was memorable.
Yeah, for sure. You
All
definitely
the education that I can say that they provided me with a great foundation.
right on. So, okay, so let's talk a little bit right now because in the Creighton School District, where I'm on the board, we are taking a look at the BLM resolution that Osborn passed, which essentially came from Balt's Chanel Poe. And then we're also kind of marrying it with the one that from Phoenix L, which is Elora Diaz, and we're just going to kind of combine the two so that it fits with what we want to say. So, talk a little bit about the resolution. Was it difficult for you to get it passed? Was it something that where you had to maybe reach out to a board member, or was it fairly easy to make it to get it passed?
It was fairly easy to get it passed. Actually, my former board colleague, who's now stepped down because she's moved to another city, she was the initiator. She, with the help of Chanel, worked on the language, and we had talked about like this resolution and what is our action plan, because resolutions are a belief system and we can believe anything we want, but what is the action behind it? Like, what are we going to do? What are those steps that we're going to take to ensure that it's not just a document that's living on our website and that lives and dies there? So Katie introduced the resolution to the commitments to Black Lives Matter, and I introduced the commitment to ethnic studies, because through ethnic studies we can validate and teach the history of of Black communities, of Native American communities, and Mexican American communities, but more importantly, Black communities, because of the current situation that we're under. And we can no longer just walk on eggshells or talk to certain people about these topics. Like, we actually have to be upfront and bold and make people uncomfortable. And not only, the goal isn't to make people uncomfortable, the goal is to educate everyone and to provide opportunities for professional development and for children to see themselves in the curriculum, and for children to learn about Black history, because it is critical that they understand not only Black history, but Indigenous history, Native American history, and Mexican American history, because there is no way that we can develop critical thinkers if we are not teaching them about, first of all, identity and the world. And through history you get to learn, and it's unfortunate because like most people don't get to learn about history until they get to African American history or Latin American history or Mexican American history or Asian American history till they get to college. And that is where that's too late. If we want to change the narrative, if we want to change our systems, it starts as early as preschool and kindergarten. Children need to know that this is a diverse world. Children need to know history. When children are taught history, they are validating not only themselves, but it's helping to validate all histories. And all people are worthy of a life with dignity, and we should all respect everyone, just regardless of their skin color. And for me, taking history class in college, like that's when I reached self-actualization, was when I was able to take these classes at the University of Arizona. But by then, like, my self-hate had gone through so many different.
No worries. No worries.
So yeah, my journey from self-hate to self-actualization like occurred, but it happened in college. We can start that as early as, kindergarten, when we are celebrating and teaching the history of all people. So for me, it is important not only to acknowledge and celebrate Black history, but it is important for me to ensure that we are hiring, that it's embedded in the curriculum, and that we have we're celebrating it, where we have posters, that we're observing, holidays. So that is all important, just like it is to hire like teachers, Black teachers and Latino teachers and Asian teachers, but specifically Black teachers. And yeah, that was the action that we took behind the Black Lives Matter Arizona. But
sorry about that. That was sorry about that. Yeah, no, what you were saying though about not receiving those kinds of history classes, we have to put a mirror up. That's the first thing that we learn as teachers too, is that self-reflection. We have to constantly be willing to put a critical eye on everything that we do. And our history in this country is messy. It's brutal, and so I didn't really learn about African American history until I got to college, and that's just totally unacceptable. So I decided to minor in history when I did my undergrad, and I just kind of naturally gravitated towards African American studies because I felt like I was cheated out of that information. And I ended up taking what was another class that I took? I took a Native American history class, and it was so crazy to me, some of the things that were said in that class that were so offensive at the college level, and so that's why we need to have this history taught to our children, early on. We can't whitewash it anymore. We can't sugarcoat it anymore. It needs to be part of the curriculum. And I loved what you said too about making it actionable, because otherwise it's just like, okay, well, this is how we feel. But then what are we going to do? What are we going to put behind this so that we can push it forward? So one of the things that you did that I know was very important to you was the ethnic studies. So how do you think the district Osborn is going to roll that out?
well, so first of all, like you had asked me about like the resolutions and how did they happen? Was it easy to pass them? Because I know that not all like school board members understand or feel comfortable with, the conversations that we have about race and ethnicity and discrimination. So I'm very lucky that I am part of the Osborn School District Governing Board and Community, because we all, my fellow board members, we all feel that we all believe the same thing. So it was really easy in that sense that we could do that. But going back to just like talking about the Black Lives Matter commitment, it's not just, the action behind ethnic studies and introducing the history through curriculum and lesson plans, but it's also like restorative practice. It's bias trainings. It is, it is so many things that we need to work on, and it's not just curriculum and hiring. It's more than that. It's complex, and the way that we envision doing this through our ethnic studies is based obviously on age groups. So for our younger children, there'll be lessons. And then as you get to middle school, it'll be in like your social studies integrated into the curriculum. So it is based on, I actually modeled it after TUSD. So TUSD has, it's called culturally responsive curriculum. Once ethnic studies was banned, they replaced it with CRC. So it is developing curriculum, professional development, and other support systems, to ensure lessons in kindergarten through 5th grade, and then courses in 6th through 8th grade in the field of ethnic studies through partnerships with local universities and ethnic studies programs. So For 6th through 8th grade, it would be through courses, and then kindergarten through 5th, it would be lessons. So that's what it would look like. And I actually modeled it, like I looked at the resolution at TUSD, LA Unified School District made it a requirement for all high school students. In order for them to graduate, they have to have taken an ethnic studies class. So, and then I looked at Portland resolution and one in Washington State, one of the school districts as well. So I looked at 4 resolutions while I was drafting ours. So it was based on what they're doing in Tucson, LA, and Portland. So I combined them and I merged them and I saw what best fits with our school district. But that's specific to ethnic studies. But, you know, going back to how we're going to change the narrative, it's not just, you know, it starts in the classroom. You know, critical thinking abilities are acquired through history, through ethnic studies, but that develops, you know, compassionate, you know, human beings, that develops, you know, resilient human beings. And that's what we need. Like our children now more than ever are experiencing so many different types of trauma. And with the leadership that we have, those traumas are triggered and ignited. And, you know, when you live in a country, when you're told that you or people who look like you are rapists and criminals, you start to internalize that. When you are told that because of the color of your skin, you are not worthy, or, you know, that children internalize that. So it's going to take a lot more than just, you know, enacting these or implementing these resolutions. It's going to take a whole community of work, and it's not just, you know, reflective of like the work that we're going to do in schools. It's going to take more than that, and we need to raise resilient, critical thinkers who are innovative, who are adaptive and flexible to be able to be successful in this world. Because as we have noticed under this pandemic, things are just really challenging with the racism and discrimination that's currently going on. So we have to do better by our children. And this is the way that I can make a difference, that our school district can make a difference. And I am so lucky to be in a school district where we all believe the same things and want what's best for our children.
So we have some actual, so Mariana Sandoval with Agua Fria School District is on right now. Let's see, I thought I saw, oh, Nicholas Martin, who's running in Phoenix L, a candidate, and Mary Kay. Mary Kay, I want to make sure I say her name right. UTEC, I don't know. She said bias training should be first for every district that has a Title I school population. And she is absolutely right. And I recall it was last summer, summer of 2019, back when we could actually go to conferences. And there was an implicit bias training there. And boy, it was kind of eye-opening. I mean, you know, seeing these are school board members who were making statements like, there's no such thing as white privilege, or if you use that term, I'm not even going to engage. I mean, people literally were shutting down. And then some of the things that were said, it was just like, oh my gosh, did that person just really say that? And they serve on a school board? It's very concerning to me. And so Mary Kay is absolutely right that bias training should really be part of what we do. And especially, I mean, I don't think that it should be just limited though to Title I schools. I think
that's not specific. There are children of all ethnicities in all schools, so that shouldn't be limited to Title I schools. I think everyone should take, you know, the training. And we were very lucky that we partnered up with Phoenix Union High School, which provides an amazing bias training. If you guys reach out to them, I'm sure they'd put you in contact with the appropriate individuals. And yeah, like, and it's not just 1 year. It's like, we should do this like every 3 to 6 months, because we need to all like check ourselves and be aware of our biases.
Yeah, and it's not just a matter of checking off a box. Okay, well, I had this training and now I am perfect in every way. No, it's like this is work that you keep on doing, and you discover things about yourself. And in my opinion, that's always a good thing. I mean, I'm a teacher. If I could go to school for the rest of my life and not have to worry about student loan debt, I would go, and I think we should all be lifelong learners. And if that means sometimes that we do have uncomfortable conversations, and that we have to put that mirror up, and maybe we don't look good that day, we've got to do that. And it's really, and especially when we are talking about our children. Now, I really want to honor your time. Real quick though, I want to, because I know you have somewhere else to be. So real quick, I do want to talk very quickly about COVID. What are Osborn's plans for COVID as of right now?
So because my superintendent is about to share some news at 5 o'clock, I'm not able to, I want to respect him and give him the opportunity to do that in his role as superintendent. But I do want to go back to what we just said. So I was born in a state, Veracruz, the Gulf of Mexico. And one thing that as Latinos, I can tell you by firsthand experience, like in my state, we have Afro-Mexicanos, because that is where the conquistadores, the Spanish, came in, Hernan Cortés, through the port of Veracruz. So in my state, we have Black people, Black Mexicans. And the fact that for the first time in the history of the nation of Mexico, they're finally counting our Afro-Mexicanos in the census. Like, what does that say about like how, like, as Mexicans, like I can tell you that living in Mexico City, the lighter you are, the more acceptable you are, because it's a classist country. So I will say that we all have to work on our biases. And as someone who comes from a beautiful state that is so diverse in its history, because it's where not history, obviously, like our indigenous people were there until the conquest, but because of its diversity and because of its beauty of its people, like I really do like see that, finally things are changing in Latin America, but we are in the United States. Like we have access to some of the best universities. There is a reason why people sacrifice their lives to come to this country. And we have so much access and opportunity. We can do so much better, not only for our children, but like also for everyone. So I think that to me is important, that we come from some of it is programming, but we can unprogram these things if we want to, right? It's what you talk about, the education part, like we don't have to go back to school and get into debt, but you can pick up a book, you can do a training, you can invest in yourself and make a difference. You don't have to be like a PhD to do this work. Like if you want to put in the work, like it is possible.
Yeah, for sure. So Katie Pates, I'm so sad that she is not going to be on your board anymore, because she's a fantastic board member. But we started a book discussion that we're doing on Mondays with the book, The Guide for White Women Who Teach Black Boys. And, as somebody who considers myself really like progressive, a strong advocate and ally for my Black students, my students of color, I was reading some of these chapters. I'm like, oh gosh, I remember in my first year when I did this, or I remember when, like I elevated, right, some of these things that I just think, well, that's just how things are done. Well, it's like, well, that's like kind of how the colonizers do things, right? So you have to always really be able to hold up that mirror. And again, I know you have somewhere to be, but I need to ask you, because so we're going to end here in just a second. My campaign manager would slap me if I didn't say something about jcformc.com. And as a matter of fact, I could probably, if you're interested in getting a PDF copy of the book, the Guide for White Women Who Teach Black Boys, by all means, if you want to go ahead and go onto my website and fill in a little thing about whatever, then you could do that and I'll give you a copy of it. But I want to ask you, because you said your first job was at 14. I started working when I was 13. I was a bus girl at a restaurant where my mom worked, because at that time, my parents were on strike with United Auto Workers, making parts for GM. So my mom delivered papers, bagged groceries, and worked in a restaurant. And so she got me a job as a busgirl. So what was your first job, Ylenia Aguilar?
So I worked, well, I actually started working at 12. I was always babysitting. So I would always babysit, but at 14, I have a sister who's 8 years older than me, and I was undocumented at the time. So I used her fake ID, and I worked as a cashier at AutoZone.
All right.
So
So
I know how
wait,
to change my tires and my oil, but I don't do it. But that was my first job.
all right. That's hilarious. I love the fact that you used a fake ID to get a job. Like that's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Ylenia, for coming on today. I appreciate you so much. I appreciate the work that you do in Osborn, and I look forward to stealing more of the things that come out of the Osborn School Board because you guys have great ideas.
Thank you so much. I'm really like honored, and thank you for this opportunity.
Sure. All right. Bye, Ylenia. Bye, everybody. Take care.